right, this class is for the class discovering, this worksheet is for the class discovering Algebra 1, Part 1, and in this video we're going to be working with some OR compound inequalities. So in this one we have two distinct ranges that x can be, okay? So in this type of equation, you work each possibility out separately. So it's almost like drawing a line. I need to calibrate my pen. Right there where the OR is. And working out one side and then the other side. Okay? And then putting it back together. Alright, I'm going to add 6 to both sides. That's going to give me 22 is less than negative 6, not 6, s. That's an understood 1 in front of it, so I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 1. Since I divided by a negative, remember, we got to flip that inequality, and we should have by this point tested why that's true. You know, looked at some tables of values. Okay, now on the other side, we have 2s plus 5 is greater than or equal to 11. Got to subtract 5 from both sides, which is going to leave me with a 6 over here. Remember, we're just solving it like we would an equation if there was an equal sign there. Now I got to divide out the 2, and s will be greater than or equal to 3. Now that all of that is done, I can graph it. Remember, you have to graph as well. Alright, so I'm going to put my 0 in the middle. I'm going to put my negative 22 down here and my plus 3 right there. And the first one says the s is less than a negative 22. So it's all the stuff less than this value. Everything to the left happens to be less than, so it's good. We're good. But on this one, it's equal to 3, but it's also everything more than. So you see how it has two distinct things going on. It's this or it's this. Okay? Now remember, the reason that we flip that inequality is because of the multiplication with integers rule. Because s is negative, you see how there's a negative in front of that s, it's going to be the opposite of whatever I put in it. So actually putting numbers that are less than negative 21 are going to make that s a positive number, because it's going to be the opposite of that when you evaluate it. When I put a negative 23 in for that negative s, the two negatives are going to make it a positive 23. And that's why we had to flip that inequality. We want those negative values. All right, for this one, again, it's like putting a line through your OR and working it out as two separate inequalities. The 13 is adding to the v, so I'm going to subtract it on both sides. All right, and the last thing we want to do is get that together, which is going to give me a negative 5. All right, so now we got to look at that other side. Oh, and on the other side we have a negative 8 times v, which means we're going to be dividing by a negative 8, which means, let me circle that, and I'll tell you the reason why I circle it in these situations. It's because eventually these get longer and they get longer and they get longer, and I don't want to get to the end of a page and say, wait a minute, scratch my head, these don't make sense. I would rather hit it somewhere in the middle, you know, and I can do that. If I circle that, then I can say, oh, wait a minute, let me check that I actually flip that negative, because that's probably where my accident is. So it's kind of like a checkpoint, so I don't have to go back to the very beginning. All right, two negatives make a positive, and 8 goes into 45 times. So on this one, we got 5 on both sides. They're just different 5s. So on this side, x is all the values less than negative 5, two different distinct ranges. Or we can have v as, not x, v as greater than 5, all the values greater than 5. So this is an OR. We have a vast thing in the middle of things it can't be. It would be easier to define the set of things it can't be. All right. right, let's look at these. Okay, so again, doing all ORs today. So let's go ahead and solve this one. This is a two-step. The 3 is adding to the r, so the opposite operation would be subtracted from both sides. And the 2 is multiplying the r, so the opposite operation would be to divide it from both sides. So for our first condition, our first range, we find that r is all the values less than 2. And I'm going to go ahead and do this as we find it. So r is everything less than 2. Huh. So we must have a higher number over here. I probably should have scooted my 2 down. We'll figure it out. Alright, so the 9 is being added to the r, so I have to subtract it from both sides. And that is going to give me a -7. I also have understood 1 here, so I need to divide out this -1 on both sides, okay, so that I find that r is less than or equal to, oh, I divided by a negative and I forgot to circle it, but I caught that my answer didn't make sense. Got to flip that inequality and find that the answer is 7. R has to be greater than or equal to this time, so filled in circle, a 7. All right. Ooh, we got a lot of stuff going on here. First, let's get this together. That's going to give me -8 is greater than w plus 3. The 3 is adding to the w, so I'm going to subtract it on both sides in order to move it over. It's going to give me a -11 is greater than a w. Okay, so I must be some pretty small stuff on this one, because this is the greater, which means my w is everything less than. All right, on the other side, the first thing I got to do is add that 13 because it's subtracting. So I'm going to add it on both sides. Then I'm going to subtract this w. And I get down to 4w is greater than 20. Now I got to divide out the 4. Now I didn't divide by any negatives, so I'm good as gold. I don't have to flip that inequality or anything. And w is greater than 5. So let me put some numbers in context. It's not equal to, so open circle, but it's everything greater than it. It's 6, it's 7, it's 8, it's 9, it's all the stuff to the right. All right, again, we have another OR going on. All right, so the first thing I need to do is add that 6 to both sides since it's subtracting the s. I want to do the opposite operation. The next step is to divide out the 9, and s is going to be less than 2. Over here, I got to subtract the 1 from both sides because it's adding. That's going to be 3s is greater than 12. Divide out the 3, and s is greater than 4. So if I graph those conditions, put my 0 over here, 2, 4, 6, yada yada. S is less than 2, so its number's less than 2. So 0, 1, -5. So it's everything to the left of the 2. But on this side, S is greater than 4. So it's 6, it's 10, it's a bazillion. It's everything to the right of 4. All right, the 12 is adding the w, so I'm going to subtract it on both sides. -4w is greater than or equal to a -2. When I divide out that -4, I see that I'm dividing by a negative, so I'm going to circle my inequality. And I'm left with w is less than or equal to, because I flipped it, 1/2. Okay? Now over here, I'm going to add that 14 because it's being subtracted, which is going to give me 5w is greater than 10. Divide out my 5, and w is greater than 2. Let's graph our possibilities. All right, so we're less than a half or equal to. So that's 0, that's -1, that's everything to the left of this 1/2. And we're greater than 2, that's 5, that's a bazillion, that's 1,000,000. It's everything to the right. I believe that's it, yeah. These are the last two on this worksheet. All right, so the 2 is, it's really weird and to tell what the 2 is doing because it's on the left side of the H. So I'm just going to go ahead and start flipping it around. As long as everything retains its side and retains its side mates, we're good. So 2 and H are on one side together. They remained on one side. The H remained negative and the 2 remained positive. The 5 is all by itself and it was negative and it remained negative. So now I can see I got to subtract 2 from both sides. That's going to give me a -7 because it's adding up my debt. I'm going to have to divide by a -1, which means flipping my sign. And H is greater than or equal to a 7. Over here, the 5 is adding to the H, so I'm going to subtract it. Which is going to give me 66. I'm going to divide out the 6 on both sides, and I find that H is greater than or equal to 11. Now, hold on, let me look at this. Yeah, this one's going to be odd, and I'm going to show you. Okay, this one was odd. H is everything greater or equal to 11. And 7 is everything greater and equal to 7. Ah, I don't have an or. Look, we have overlapping ideas, right? Really, all this is H has to be greater than or equal to 7. This one's kind of null and void. Everything in that set is also in this one. So this one's not an or anymore. It shouldn't be an or. All right, so let's go ahead and do the next one. So in the next one, I'm going to flip-flop my sides. Okay, that is what I was looking for. I didn't think I had any that did that on this worksheet. Let's go back to 7. I made a little mistake. When I flipped around my equation, one other thing you have to be careful of that I guess I wasn't careful enough of is what you do with that inequality. Okay, so it was open on the side with the 2, so it needs to stay open on that side. I flipped it when I flipped my sides. So now when I do this, I'm going to get all of the same stuff, but when I go to flip my inequality, because I divide by -1, it's going to flip the other direction. It's going to go to less than or equal to a 7. I took it down wrong when I did that. That side doesn't have to change at all. So now, and this makes more sense, because I didn't think I had any like that on this worksheet, H is equal to 7 and everything less than, and H is equal to 11, but everything more than. All right, last one, put my line down the middle. All right, so I have to subtract 5 from both sides. That's going to give me 1 is less than x. Over here, got a lot more to do. That 6 is adding to the x, so I'm going to subtract it from both sides. It's going to give me a fractional answer. I can already tell. Okay, so I'm going to divide both sides by a -2. I divide it by a negative. X is going to equal a -5/2 or a -2 1/2 or 2.5, -2.5. All right, so x is on the greater side. So it's all the values at 1 to the greater, which is on the right. And on this one, it's -1.5, and it is I gotta flip it, greater than or equal to, so it's filled in. And all the values of x are going to be greater than, which means that I'm going to also go to the right. All right. Which means this one is going to turn into a continuous idea, which was the only one I thought did that. All right, very good, very good. All right, so I'll see you guys in class. Let me know if you have any questions, and adios.